Here's a problem I see constantly. You need to sell your current home to afford your next one, but you haven't actually found your next home yet. So what do? Sell now and live in a hotel for 2 months? Move twice and pay for storage in between on top of all the other moving costs? There's actually a much smarter solution, and almost nobody talks about it. It's called a lease-back, and today I'm going to explain exactly how it works in plain language with real numbers and scenarios so you can decide if it's right for you. So what is a lease-back? Sometimes also called a rent-back. It's an agreement where you sell your home, then rent it from the new owner for a set period of time after closing. This gives you access to your home equity right away while buying you extra time to find your next home, finish packing, or honestly just not feel completely rushed into a decision you'll regret for years. I want you to really sit with that for a second. You get the money from your sale and you get to stay put. Leasebacks solve a really common problem. Needing to sell before you can buy, but not wanting to move twice or rush a decision you'll be living with for years. Here's why my clients choose this route. They need the proceeds from their current home to actually buy their next one. They haven't found the right next home yet and don't want to feel pressured into something wrong just to meet a deadline. They want extra time to sort through belongings without a tight deadline breathing down their neck, or they just want to avoid the cost and hassle of temporary housing or storage units, which honestly adds up fast and adds a lot of stress nobody needs during an already stressful process. I've also add some sellers simply want certainty. They'd rather lock in their sale price now in a market that could shift rather than wait and hope conditions stay favorable while they search. A leaseback lets you capture today's value while you take your time on the buying side. So, how does that work? Here's how the process actually plays out. When we list your home, we can include leaseback terms as part of the offer or negotiate them once an offer actually comes in. Typically, the lease period ranges from a few weeks to a few months, though longer arrangements are sometimes possible depending on the buyer's needs and how flexible they are willing to be. During the leaseback period, you pay rent to the new owner, usually based on their estimated mortgage, taxes, and insurance costs. This gets spelled out clearly in a lease agreement. Separate from the purchase contract, so everyone fully understands the terms going in and with no confusion or surprises later. One thing I always clarify for sellers, the closing itself happens on the original timeline. You receive your funds, the title transfers, everything is final. The leaseback is simply a separate additional agreement layered on top of that closed sale, giving you a defined window to keep living there as a tenant rather than as an owner. Not every buyer is open to a leaseback, especially if they need to move in right away themselves. Maybe they're relocating for a job or coming out of a lease of their own with a hard deadline. That's why it helps to discuss this option early so we can target buyers and offers that are actually a good fit from the start, rather than, trying to negotiate this after the fact when the buyer's already mentally moved in. And it's also smart to have a real estate attorney review the lease agreement, so your rights and responsibilities are completely clear before you sign anything. This protects both you and the buyer, and it's a very small cost that prevents much bigger headaches down the line. One more thing worth watching for. Make sure the leaseback terms specify exactly what happens if you need to extend even a few extra days. Life happens. Closing on your next home can shift, and having that flexibility built into the agreement up front saves a lot of last-minute stress. This option tends to work well if you need to sell before buying your next home, if you want to avoid moving twice, if you're comfortable paying rent for a short period after closing, and if you want flexibility instead of a hard deadline on moving day. If any of that sounds like your situation, this is absolutely worth bringing up before you ever list your home, not after offers start coming in. On the other hand, if you've already found your next home and your timelines line up naturally, you may not need this tool at all. and that's perfectly fine too. A leaseback is a solution to a specific timing problem, not something every seller needs to use. Let me give you a real picture of how this looks. I had a couple last year selling their longtime home in Carmel. They hadn't found their next place yet, and the thought of moving twice was, well, overwhelming, to say the least. We negotiated a 60-day lease back as part of the sale. They closed, received their proceeds, and kept living in the home while they took their time finding the right next place without rushing into anything. By the time their lease back ended, they'd found exactly what they wanted, and they'd moved once calmly instead of twice in a panic. Here's something worth knowing about the numbers. Their rent back during the lease back period was based on the new owner's actual carrying costs, roughly what the new owner's mortgage, taxes, and insurance worked out to be per day. It wasn't designed to be a profit center for the buyer, just a fair way to cover their costs while everyone waited on the seller's timeline. And one more detail that surprised them, a security deposit was actually part of the leaseback agreement too, just like a normal rental arrangement which protected the new owner in case of damage during that period. It's a real lease with real terms, even though it only lasts a couple of months. If you're worried about the timing of selling your current home and buying your next one, a leaseback may be exactly the solution you need. I'm Susan Roberts with Homes by Roberts Realty, brokered by eXp, and the only AI certified agent in the Indianapolis area. I've helped many Hamilton County sellers structure these exact agreements so they can sell with confidence and move on their own timeline, not someone else's. The last thing I want you to remember, not every buyer will say yes to this, and that's okay. Part of my job is finding the right buyer for your specific situation, someone whose timeline and needs actually line up with what you're asking for, rather than forcing a lease back onto a buyer who's in a hurry themselves. You can click the link below or give me a call, and let's talk about whether a lease back makes sense for your specific situation. This video opened up an option you hadn't considered or even known about. Hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.